The Carters' peaceful family vacation takes an unexpected turn when subtle, unsettling behavior threatens their safety. Faced with fear and uncertainty, Alex and Megan must decide whether to confront the danger or remain silent. What follows is a powerful journey of courage, resilience, and a fight for justice that impacts not just their family, but the entire community around them. Will the Carters find the strength to speak up and make a difference, or will they let fear control their actions? Follow their compelling story and see how one decision changes everything. If stories of bravery and unity inspire you, subscribe for more content like this and share your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let's dive into their unforgettable journey. Silver Shores Resort was supposed to be an oasis, a paradise tucked between endless stretches of golden sand and the turquoise ocean. For the Carters, it was a chance to reconnect after a grueling year. The resort promised everything: relaxation, adventure, and a respite from the everyday grind. As they stepped into the open-air lobby, a light breeze carried the scent of salt and the faint notes of tropical flowers. Alex Carter's heart lifted at the sight of his children's wide-eyed excitement. Emma, 13, with her long, sun-streaked hair, took in the scene with cautious anticipation. Beside her, Jake, only 8 but bursting with uncontainable energy, darted toward a fountain at the center of the lobby, splashing water with a giggle. Megan Carter looped her arm through Alex's, giving him a smile that spoke of shared relief. "We made it," she said, her voice soft but full of promise. Alex squeezed her hand. "We did. This is going to be good for all of us." The room was everything they'd hoped for, spacious, with crisp white linens and wide sliding doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the main pool. Emma dropped her bag by the foot of the bed and stepped outside, the sun warming her face as she gazed out at the deep blue water sparkling under the midday light. Jake barreled past her, pressing his face against the glass railing. "Can we go to the pool now?" Jake asked, his voice loud with excitement. Megan laughed, already digging through her bag for sunscreen. "Let's get changed first." The pool was busy, but not crowded, a mix of families and couples lounging under the shade of striped umbrellas. Alex's eyes swept the area, taking in the laughing children, the clinking of ice-filled glasses, and the lifeguards patrolling the edges of the water. One stood out to him, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a hard, unreadable expression. The name Derek gleamed on his name tag. Derek's gaze moved slowly, methodically, across the swimmers, pausing on Emma for just a beat longer than Alex liked. He felt a flicker of unease, a remnant of his years in law enforcement whispering at the edges of his mind. He shook it off, determined to enjoy the break. "Alex." Megan's voice pulled him back, her smile bright beneath the wide brim of her hat. "Come sit." He nodded, forcing himself to relax as Emma splashed into the water, her laughter echoing across the pool. But even as he leaned back in his chair, he couldn't shake the sense of being watched. The afternoon melted into an easy rhythm of swims and snacks. Jake raced up and down the shallow end, practicing his dives, while Emma swam laps, her strokes smooth and practiced. Alex's initial wariness began to dissolve, replaced by the contentment that had eluded him for so long, until he noticed Derek again. The lifeguard stood with his arms crossed, sunglasses obscuring his eyes, but his posture was rigid, almost confrontational. Alex's jaw tightened as Derek's head turned, following Emma's movements in the water. The moment stretched, taut and uncomfortable, until Emma pulled herself out of the pool and walked over, droplets trailing down her tanned legs. "Dad, can I get a snack?" she asked, her voice light, but her eyes glancing back toward the lifeguard stand. "Of course," Alex said, standing up. He put a hand on her shoulder, catching the slight tension there. His eyes met Megan's, who raised an eyebrow in silent question. "Just keeping an eye out," he murmured. She nodded, understanding without asking for more. By the time they returned to their suite that evening, the sky had deepened to shades of orange and violet. Emma sat on the balcony, her fingers tapping lightly against the metal railing as she watched the sun sink behind the horizon. "Everything okay, Em?" Alex asked, stepping outside to join her. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, It's just the lifeguard earlier. He kept staring at me. It was weird. Alex's jaw tightened. I saw that, he said quietly. If you ever feel uncomfortable, you tell me, okay? I'll handle it. Emma's lips curved into a small, grateful smile. I know, Dad. Inside, Megan's voice floated out, calling them to dinner. The unease lingered as they gathered around the table, the chatter of Jake's stories filling the room. But beneath it all, the subtle current of worry thrummed just out of reach. The next day dawned with golden lights spilling over the resort, waking Alex with a sense of tentative hope. He wanted to believe that yesterday's unease had been a fluke. He glanced at Megan, who was still sleeping soundly, her breathing deep and even. He shifted quietly out of bed, pulling on a t-shirt before stepping out onto the balcony. The morning air was crisp with the scent of the ocean and carried the distant sound of waves lapping at the shore. Below, the pool glistened, empty except for the early morning maintenance crew skimming the water. The resort felt serene, almost magical in its quiet state. But even in this peace, Alex's gaze drifted to the lifeguard stand. It was empty now, the chair tilted forward as if someone had just left. Megan joined him a few minutes later, wrapping her arms around his waist. Couldn't sleep? She asked, her voice still thick with sleep. Just thinking, Alex admitted, his eyes lingering on the pool. About yesterday. Megan's brow creased as she followed his gaze. Do you think it's worth mentioning to the resort management? If it makes you feel better, we could ask them to keep an eye on him. Alex nodded slowly. Yeah, I might do that. After breakfast, the family headed down to the pool, the warm morning sun already drawing guests out to claim loungers and settle into the rhythm of vacation life. Jake raced ahead, his snorkel mask already pushed up onto his forehead as he cannonballed into the shallow end, sending water splashing everywhere. Emma followed at a more measured pace, glancing at her dad with a smile before stepping into the cool water. Alex sat back, trying to enjoy the morning. He sipped his iced coffee and leaned over to Megan. I'm going to stop by the front desk after a while, just to put in a word. She nodded, her expression supportive. Good idea. A sudden silence fell over Alex's thoughts as he noticed Derek walking into the pool area. He wore the standard red lifeguard uniform, sunglasses already in place. His presence was commanding. There was something about the way he moved, scanning the crowd, that felt off. Alex's heart kicked up a notch when he saw Derek's head turn toward Emma, who was gliding through the water with practiced strokes. The lifeguard's attention locked on her for a fraction longer than necessary. Emma, unaware, flipped underwater and surfaced on the other side, water streaming down her face as she laughed at Jake's antics. Alex put down his coffee, the cool condensation slipping through his fingers. I'll be back in a bit, he said to Megan, who glanced at him with quiet understanding. The lobby of Silver Shores was airy, filled with tropical plants and the low hum of conversation. Mr. Conway, the resort manager, stood behind the check-in desk, his smile practiced and polite as he spoke with guests. Alex waited until he was free and approached. Mr. Conway, do you have a moment? Alex asked, keeping his voice even. Conway glanced at him, recognition flickering in his eyes. Mr. Carter, of course. How can I help you? Alex hesitated, choosing his words carefully. My family and I have noticed some behavior from one of the lifeguards that has raised concerns, specifically Derek. Conway's smile tightened slightly, but he nodded. What sort of behavior? It's hard to explain. He's been paying a bit too much attention to certain guests, including my daughter. It might be nothing, but it's enough that I felt it should be mentioned. The manager's face shifted, a more serious expression settling in. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll make sure we look into it. Guest safety is our top priority. Alex nodded, a measure of relief washing over him. I appreciate it. As he walked back to the pool, Alex's mind raced. He hoped this would be enough to prompt a change. He spotted Megan watching him as he returned and gave her a reassuring nod. It's done, he whispered, sitting beside her. The day stretched on, sun soaking the pool area in warmth. Alex kept an eye on Emma, who was now lounging on a float, her head tipped back in relaxation. For a while, everything seemed fine. Then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed Derek. He stood at his post, rigid and unmoving, scanning the crowd. But when his gaze settled on Emma, something shifted in his posture, almost imperceptibly, but enough for Alex to feel a fresh wave of unease. Megan shifted beside him. "Alex, relax. We did what we could. Let's enjoy this, okay?" He forced a smile. "You're right," he said, but the instinct to watch and protect pulsed in him, refusing to be ignored. Emma's laugh rang out again as Jake tried to splash her, missing by a wide margin. Alex's shoulders relaxed slightly at the sound, but when he caught Derek's eyes moving between him and his daughter, a chill rippled down his spine. The lifeguard's jaw was set, his expression unreadable behind the mirrored lenses of his sunglasses. Emma climbed out of the pool and wrapped herself in a towel, glancing back at Derek before walking toward her parents. She leaned close, her voice low. "That guy is still watching me, Dad." Alex felt a surge of anger mixed with protectiveness. He met Emma's gaze, his own unwavering. "It's okay, Em. We're going to make sure it stays that way." The next morning began with a warm breeze and the scent of salt in the air. The resort bustled with guests eager to start their day, laughter and the sounds of splashing water mixing into a chorus of vacation life. But for Alex, the tension hadn't loosened its grip. As the family made their way down to the pool, he glanced at Emma, noting the slight hesitation in her step and the way she scanned the pool area before dipping into the water. Megan settled onto a lounger, applying sunscreen with practiced movements. She caught Alex's gaze and gave him a smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Let's try to enjoy today, Alex," she said softly, rubbing her hands together as she watched Jake run toward the shallow end, snorkel gear clutched in his hands. Alex nodded, the muscles in his jaw clenching as he glanced over at the lifeguard stand. Derek was there, his posture unchanged, a sentry in red and white. He seemed more relaxed today, but still vigilant in a way that made Alex's skin prickle. A moment later, Derek's eyes moved, catching Alex's, and for a brief second, it felt like a silent challenge. Alex forced himself to look away, focusing on Jake's laughter as he dove under the water. Emma swam a few laps, the rhythmic splash of her strokes easing some of the tightness in Alex's chest. But when she climbed out and approached, there was an edge to her smile, a shadow that shouldn't have been there. "Dad, can I sit here for a while?" she asked, settling onto the towel beside Megan without waiting for an answer. "Everything okay?" Megan asked, her eyes searching Emma's face. Emma hesitated, glancing at Derek, who was now turned slightly away, speaking to another lifeguard. "I just don't feel like swimming right now." Megan's hand found Emma's, squeezing gently. "You don't have to, honey. We can just sit and relax." Alex's gaze returned to Derek, his protective instincts surging. He needed a better plan, something more than just watching and waiting. After an hour of trying to relax by the pool, Alex stood, brushing off sand from his shorts. "I'll be right back," he said to Megan, who nodded, understanding without asking. He made his way to the small cafe adjacent to the pool, a shaded spot with tables overlooking the water. There, he spotted Tara, one of the younger lifeguards. She was on a break, sipping iced tea and scrolling through her phone. Alex approached, keeping his tone casual. "Hi, Tara, right?" he said. She looked up, startled for a moment before recognition softened her features. "Yes, Mr. Carter. Everything okay?" Alex glanced at the pool, where Derek was now pacing. "I wanted to ask you about Derek. Has he been here long?" Tara's smile wavered. She shifted in her seat, putting down her glass. "He's been here a while. Came on full-time last season." "Why?" Alex leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "He's been paying a lot of attention to my daughter. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's unsettling." Tara's eyes darted around, her body tensing. "I've noticed he can be intense. He keeps to himself mostly, but when he talks, She hesitated, then added, "It's like he's judging people, you know? I've mentioned it to management, but he's good at his job, and no one's ever had a concrete reason to report him." Alex's mind churned with the information. "Thanks, Tara. I appreciate your honesty." She nodded, glancing over at Derek before returning to her phone, her shoulders tight with the awareness of being watched. Returning to his lounger, Alex sat next to Megan, who looked at him questioningly. He relayed his conversation with Tara in a low voice, careful not to alarm Emma, who was now watching Jake do tricks in the water. "So, what do we do?" Megan whispered, her eyes darting toward Derek, who was now back at his post, arms crossed and gaze sweeping over the pool. "We keep an eye out and stay close. If he makes another move, we escalate this to more than just a conversation with the manager," Alex said, the determination hardening in his tone. Megan's eyes met his, the silent understanding between them clear. They would do whatever it took to protect their family. The day wore on, a blur of bright sun and splashing water. Guests came and went, oblivious to the tension that coiled tight between Alex and Megan. Derek moved around the pool, his attention mostly professional, but every time Emma swam to the deeper end, his head turned just a bit faster, his gaze lingering just a moment too long. Alex felt like a coiled spring, ready to snap. When Derek stopped near a group of lifeguards and spoke with them, the subtle smirk on his lips made Alex's hands clench into fists. The lifeguards exchanged glances, a few of them frowning before turning away. It was a small detail, but one that Alex filed away, a piece of the puzzle that still needed solving. Emma got out of the pool and sat beside her parents, pulling her knees to her chest. "Dad," she said, her voice low, "I want to go back to the room for a bit." Alex's heart sank, but he nodded, masking his worry with a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's all go. We could use a break." As they walked away, Alex felt the weight of Derek's eyes on their backs, a silent promise that whatever game was being played wasn't over. Back in their suite, Emma went to the balcony and sat quietly, staring at the waves. Jake, sensing the shift in mood, stayed close to Megan, asking questions about what they'd do next. Alex picked up his phone and called Detective Nolan, his former colleague from Homeland Security. "Alex, it's been a while." Nolan's voice was warm, but laced with curiosity. "Everything okay?" "Not exactly," Alex admitted, glancing at Emma through the sliding glass door. "We're at Silver Shores, and there's a lifeguard who's giving us trouble. Nothing overt, but enough to set off alarms." Nolan's tone shifted. "All business now. What kind of trouble?" Alex relayed everything. Derek's lingering stares, Tara's cautious remarks, and the subtle shifts in the lifeguard's behavior. Nolan was quiet for a moment, then said, "I can't intervene directly unless there's a clear threat, but I can make some calls and see what the local authorities know about this guy. Keep an eye on Emma, Alex, and stay alert." "Always," Alex said, a hint of gratitude in his voice. As he hung up, Megan stepped closer, worry etched in the lines of her face. "What did Nolan say?" "He's going to look into Derek. For now, we stay vigilant." Emma turned from the balcony, catching their eyes. "Is everything okay?" she asked, a tremor in her voice. Alex forced a reassuring smile. "Yes, we're just making sure it stays that way." The sky turned a deep indigo, with stars blinking to life one by one. From their suite balcony, the Carters could hear the gentle murmur of the ocean mingled with the distant sounds of music from the resort's beachside bar. Despite the idyllic scene, Alex's nerves were frayed, strung tight from a day of watching and waiting. Megan sat beside him, her hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes searching his face. "You're still thinking about today, aren't you?" she asked, already knowing the answer. He sighed, the sound heavy with exhaustion. "Yeah. Nolan's going to do some digging, but I can't shake the feeling that something's coming." Emma sat inside, curled up on the couch with her tablet, her face illuminated by its soft glow. She hadn't mentioned Derek again, but the way she avoided eye contact whenever his name came up spoke louder than words. Jake, thankfully oblivious, was dozing off, his head resting on Megan's arm. "Let's keep tonight simple," Megan suggested. "Dinner in the room, and maybe a movie. We'll regroup tomorrow." Alex nodded, squeezing her hand. The simple comforts of family felt like a barrier, if only a temporary one, against the storm of worry brewing inside him. The suite was quiet, the air conditioning humming softly as the family settled into sleep. But Alex's rest was uneasy, broken by dreams where shadows watched from the edges of bright places. He woke suddenly, heart pounding, the room bathed in a thin strip of moonlight. Something fell off. He slid out of bed and padded to the balcony door, peering out. The resort grounds were mostly dark, with only a few dim lights casting long, silvery shadows over the pathways. His eyes scanned the pool area, empty and serene, before moving to the lifeguard stand. It stood abandoned, tilted slightly in the breeze. But just beyond, in the deeper darkness, Alex saw movement. A figure slipping past the pool gate, quick and stealthy. Alex's pulse jumped, his instincts honed from years of law enforcement taking over. He slipped into a pair of sneakers, grabbed his phone, and stepped outside. He kept to the shadows, moving quietly along the path that skirted the pool. The resort felt different at night. Each rustling leaf and distant splash seemed amplified, a symphony of potential danger. He reached the stand and found nothing, the shadows shifting as he glanced around. His phone buzzed, startling him. A message from Nolan. Checked with local authorities. Derek had prior complaints at his last job. Be cautious. Alex's jaw tightened, the pieces beginning to fall into place. The figure he'd seen was gone, and the silence pressed in like a warning. He made his way back to the suite, his mind racing with questions and a resolve that was hardening into something sharper. Morning arrived with the cheerful clamor of guests heading to breakfast and the beach, unaware of the tension simmering beneath the surface for the Carters. Alex paced the room, replaying last night's encounter. He hadn't told Megan yet, choosing to keep his observations to himself until he could figure out the best course of action. Emma emerged from her room, looking more rested. "Can we do something different today?" she asked, trying for casual but unable to hide the shadow in her eyes. Megan glanced up from where she was tidying up the breakfast plates. "How about we head to the beach instead of the pool?" she suggested, eyes flicking to Alex for confirmation. "Good idea," he agreed, forcing a smile. "Let's get ready." As they gathered their things, Alex's phone buzzed again. Nolan's number flashed on the screen, and he answered quickly, stepping into the hallway. "Alex, I got more on Derek," Nolan said without preamble. There were formal warnings at his last resort, behavior that bordered on harassment, but it was never escalated to the point of charges. It seems he's been able to slip through with a clean enough record to get hired elsewhere. Alex's hand tightened around the phone. "Does management know about this?" "They will soon. I'll put in a call to local authorities to give them a heads up, but be careful. If Derek feels cornered, who knows what he might do." "Thanks, Nolan. I owe you one. Just keep your family safe, Alex. That's what matters." Alex ended the call, a cold resolve settling in his chest. Today wasn't just about enjoying the beach. It was about staying vigilant. The beach was crowded, umbrellas dotting the sand like bright flowers under the intense sun. Emma and Jake built sandcastles while Megan read under the shade, her gaze shifting frequently to the children. Alex positioned their chairs to have a clear line of sight to the path that led back to the pool area. "Are you going to relax at all?" Megan teased, a forced lightness in her tone. He chuckled, though it came out strained. "Trying," he said, lowering his sunglasses. But his relaxation was short-lived. As he watched Emma and Jake, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the beach, talking animatedly to another staff member. Derek. His uniform was exchanged for casual clothes, but his posture was unmistakable. Alex's heart thudded painfully as Derek's gaze slid over the crowd, pausing briefly when it reached Emma. He tensed, ready to move, but Derek shifted his attention and started walking along the shore, disappearing around a curve in the beach. Alex's fingers unclenched, leaving faint impressions in his palms. "Alex." Megan's voice was sharper now, her eyes wide with alarm. She'd seen it too. "I know," he said, swallowing hard. "We're not letting them out of our sight." Emma's laughter rose above the sound of the waves, an innocent moment that Alex knew he'd protect with everything he had. As the sun began its slow descent, turning the sky into a canvas of orange and pink, the Carters gathered their things to head back to their suite. Alex felt the weight of the day pressing on him, each step heavy with unresolved tension. Back in the suite, with Jake busy on his tablet and Emma showering off the salt from the beach, Megan closed the door and turned to Alex. "This can't go on. We need to make a formal complaint." Alex nodded, his face serious. "We will. And this time, I'm not just talking to management. I'll make sure they understand the consequences if they don't act." Megan's eyes softened with both gratitude and worry. Promise me we'll get through this vacation without anything happening. I promise, Alex said, though inside, he knew it was a promise made on thin ice. As night fell, Alex reached out to Mr. Conway, requesting an urgent meeting. The manager agreed, but Alex could hear the hesitation in his voice. Tomorrow would be the day they pushed back against Derek's silent intimidation, and Alex would be ready. The morning sun blazed across the resort as Alex headed to the lobby for his meeting with Mr. Conway. The air felt thick, charged with unspoken tension. Megan stayed behind with the kids, her expression a mix of encouragement and worry as Alex left. Mr. Conway was already seated in a small, glass-walled office near the front desk, flipping through a stack of papers. His brow lifted when he saw Alex approach, and he gestured for him to enter. "Mr. Carter," Conway began, his tone businesslike but tinged with a hint of apprehension. "Thank you for meeting with me on short notice." Alex nodded, taking the chair opposite the manager. "I'm here because this is beyond a casual concern now. I'm worried for my daughter's safety." Conway's face tightened, and he placed his hands flat on the desk. "We've been aware that you raised a concern about Derek. I've spoken with him briefly, but he denies any inappropriate behavior." "Of course he does," Alex said, his voice low and controlled. He leaned forward. "But I've been in law enforcement long enough to know when something isn't right. I'm telling you, this goes deeper than a simple misunderstanding. He's been watching my daughter, and it's unsettling." Conway sighed, looking out toward the bustling lobby. "We can't make decisions based on perception alone, Mr. Carter. But given your background and the gravity of your concern, I'll authorize a review of the security footage from the past few days." Alex's jaw unclenched slightly. "Good. I appreciate that. But you need to act quickly. If anything happens—" "It won't," Conway interrupted, his tone softening. "I'll make sure of it." Back in the suite, Alex relayed the conversation to Megan. Emma sat by the window, watching the waves with a faraway look in her eyes. Jake was on the floor, playing with his action figures, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around them. "They're going to check the security footage," Alex said, sitting beside Megan. The exhaustion in his voice was evident. She placed a hand on his knee, squeezing gently. "It's a step." Emma turned, catching the quiet seriousness in her parents' expressions. "Is this about that lifeguard?" she asked, breaking the silence. Megan exchanged a glance with Alex before answering. "Yes, honey, but we're taking care of it. You don't have to worry." Emma's brow furrowed, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shorts. "I don't want to be scared anymore." Alex's chest tightened. He moved to sit in front of her, meeting her gaze. "You won't be. We're here, and we're going to make sure you're safe." Emma's eyes softened, and she nodded slowly, her trust in him unspoken but clear. Later that afternoon, Alex's phone buzzed with a call from Detective Nolan. He stepped out onto the balcony, the sun glaring off the white railings as he answered. "Nolan," Alex said, a hint of urgency in his tone. "I got an update for you," Nolan said. "The local authorities followed up with the resort after I flagged your concerns. They're pulling Derek's employment file and speaking with some of the staff." And Alex, he hesitated, then continued. "I found another report from his previous job. A parent there mentioned similar behavior, but it was never formally pursued. He left before they could follow up." Alex's grip on the railing tightened, the metal cool against his skin. Why wasn't this caught in his background check? Different states, different reporting requirements. Sometimes things slip through the cracks. Nolan replied, frustration evident in his voice. "Stay alert, Alex. It's moving in the right direction, but we're not there yet." Alex's gaze moved to the pool below, where guests splashed and laughed, unaware of the undercurrent of danger. "We will." "Thanks, Nolan." The resort's main pool area was buzzing with activity as the sun began to set, casting warm, golden light over the water. Alex, Megan, and the kids sat in their usual spot, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. But when Derek appeared, walking the perimeter in his uniform, Alex felt his muscles tense. Derek's eyes swept over the guests, pausing for just a heartbeat when they reached Emma. She noticed, shrinking back slightly, her fingers clenching the towel around her shoulders. "That was it," Alex stood, moving with purpose toward the lifeguard stand. Megan reached out, her voice low but firm. "Alex, wait. I need to handle this," he said, gently removing her hand. Derek's expression shifted as Alex approached, calm, then narrowing into something more guarded. He didn't move, even as Alex stopped a few feet from him. "We need to talk," Alex said, his voice steady but laced with tension. Derek's lips curved slightly. "About what, Mr. Carter?" Alex felt the weight of years of training press against his need to stay calm. "I don't know what your problem is, but you're crossing a line. If you come near my daughter again, there will be consequences." The smile vanished from Derek's face, replaced by a mask of indifference. "You should watch who you threaten. I'm just doing my job." "Then do it somewhere else," Alex shot back, his voice low enough that nearby guests wouldn't hear, but sharp enough to carry the warning. Before Derek could respond, Mr. Conway appeared, flanked by 2 other staff members. "Is there a problem here?" Conway asked, glancing between them. Derek's jaw flexed, and he looked away, his silence speaking volumes. Alex turned to Conway, breathing hard. "We need answers soon." Conway nodded, understanding the unspoken urgency. "You'll have them." As the evening unfolded, the Carters tried to enjoy dinner at the resort's outdoor restaurant, a space decorated with twinkling lights and the soft strains of a guitar duo playing in the corner. Emma sat close to Alex, her smile tentative as she picked at her meal. Jake's chatter filled the air, a welcome distraction. But halfway through the meal, a murmur spread through the guests seated around them. Alex's gaze snapped up to see resort security walking briskly toward the lifeguard stand. Derek stood there, his posture stiff as they spoke to him, their faces unreadable. A moment later, Derek was escorted away, his expression a mixture of defiance and something darker. Megan reached for Alex's hand, her eyes wide. "What does this mean?" "It means they found something," he said, hope igniting for the first time in days. The next morning, Mr. Conway called Alex to the lobby. This time, Nolan was there too, a reassuring presence in his plain clothes. Conway gestured for Alex to join them in a private room off the main lobby. "We reviewed the footage and spoke to several staff members," Conway began, his voice heavy. "Derek's behavior was concerning enough for immediate action. He's been dismissed and barred from the property, pending further investigation." Nolan added, "The local police will follow up, but for now, your family is safe, Alex." Relief washed over Alex, almost overwhelming. "Thank you. Both of you. We'll be updating our hiring policies and reinforcing staff training," Conway said, sincerity evident in his eyes. "This won't happen again." Alex nodded, the weight on his shoulders easing. It wasn't over yet. There would be follow-ups, reports, and continued vigilance. But for the first time in days, Alex allowed himself to believe that they could move forward. Back at the suite, Alex sat down with Emma, who looked at him with wide, hopeful eyes. "Is it over?" she asked. He smiled, pulling her into a hug. "It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now." Megan joined them, wrapping her arms around both. The 3 of them sat there, the gentle roar of the ocean outside a reminder of peace, fragile but real. The Carters had faced a storm that tested their strength, but they had weathered it together. And as Alex looked at his family, he knew they were stronger for it. The following morning was wrapped in a calm that Alex hadn't felt in days. The resort seemed quieter, as if everyone sensed that something had shifted. Guests moved through the lobby with relaxed smiles, and the sounds of children laughing at the pool felt like a balm to frayed nerves. Alex sat on the suite's balcony, a cup of coffee in hand, watching Emma and Jake play by the water. There was a new lightness to Emma's movements, the shadow that had clung to her beginning to fade. Megan came up behind him, her touch soft on his shoulder. "They seem happier today," she said, her eyes following Emma as she jumped into the pool, her laughter echoing in the warm air. "They are," Alex replied, a small smile tugging at his lips. "And so am I." Megan sat next to him, the morning breeze ruffling her hair. "What did Conway say about Derek? Is he really gone for good?" Alex's expression turned serious. "He's been dismissed and banned from the property." Nolan confirmed that local authorities are looking into his past, and any further steps will be up to them. He paused, taking a sip of his coffee. But he won't be coming back here. Megan exhaled, relief softening the lines of worry on her face. Good. That's what I needed to hear. Emma ran up to the balcony after her swim, water dripping from her hair. She wrapped herself in a towel and looked up at her parents with a hesitant smile. Can we have breakfast down by the beach cafe today? Alex's heart lifted at her question. Of course we can, Em. As the family settled into a round table at the cafe, the sun high and bright above them, they ordered fruit platters, waffles, and fresh juice. The sound of the waves was close, soothing. For the first time, Alex felt like they could enjoy this vacation without the shadow of dread hanging over them. While Jake was engrossed in his plate, Emma leaned forward. Did something happen with that lifeguard? She asked, her voice careful. Alex and Megan exchanged a glance before Alex answered. Yes, Em. He was acting inappropriately, and the resort acted to make sure he's not here anymore. You don't have to worry about him. Emma nodded slowly, her eyes searching Alex's face for the reassurance she needed. I'm glad, she said after a moment. I was starting to feel like I couldn't go near the deep end without looking over my shoulder. You never have to feel that way again, Megan said, reaching across the table to hold her daughter's hand. We'll always protect you. Word of Derek's dismissal spread quickly, whispered between guests and quietly confirmed by resort staff. Tara, the young lifeguard who had spoken with Alex before, approached them one afternoon as they sat by the pool. Her expression was a mix of relief and cautious hope. Mr. Carter, she said, nodding at Alex, I heard what happened. Thank you for speaking up. A lot of us noticed things but didn't know what to do. It's better now. Alex smiled, the gratitude in her voice reaffirming that acting had been the right choice. I'm glad, Tara. It's important to look out for each other. A few other families Alex recognized from the past week approached him over the next few days, some offering words of support, others sharing their own stories of feeling uneasy. The Carters' decision to speak up had rippled outward, reminding everyone that vigilance and courage mattered, even on a vacation meant for relaxation. On their last night at the resort, a letter arrived at their suite, sealed in a crisp envelope with the Silver Shores logo. Alex opened it, Megan reading over his shoulder. Asterisk, Dear Mr. and Mrs. Carter, we want to express our sincere gratitude for your patience and for bringing to light an issue that needed addressing. As a result of your vigilance, we are committed to implementing stronger safety protocols, including enhanced staff training and more rigorous background checks for all employees. We hope that this will ensure Silver Shores remains a safe and welcoming place for all our guests. Thank you for your trust and for setting an example of strength and responsibility. Sincerely, James Conway, Resort Manager. Megan sighed, a sense of closure settling over her. It sounds like they're taking this seriously. Alex nodded, folding the letter. They are, and if they follow through, it'll mean better experiences for other families. Emma, who had been watching from her bed, came over. Is that from Mr. Conway? She asked. Alex handed her the letter. Yes, he's promising to make things better. Emma read it carefully, then looked up with a small smile. Good, she said, the finality in her voice clear. I don't want anyone else to be scared here. The morning of their departure was bright and warm, the kind of day that begged for one last swim. Emma and Jake took to the pool with a newfound ease, their laughter ringing out across the water. Alex watched them, his heart full. Megan slipped her hand into his, squeezing gently. We did good, she said softly, leaning into him. Alex nodded, the sounds of their children playing mingling with the ocean breeze. Yeah, we did. Emma swam over to the edge, looking up at them with a grin. Dad, are you coming in or what? With a laugh, Alex stood, tossing his hat onto the chair. You bet I am. As he dove into the water, the cold rush enveloping him, he surfaced to find Emma and Jake splashing him, their giggles bright with relief and joy. For the first time in what felt like ages, Alex laughed with them, knowing they had come through the storm together, stronger, united, and ready for whatever came next. The Carters' return home was marked by a quiet sense of relief. The familiar sight of their two-story house, framed by leafy trees and the laughter of neighborhood kids playing nearby, felt like an embrace after their tense vacation. Alex parked the car, stepping out and breathing in the cool, familiar air. The ordeal at Silver Shores had left its mark, but there was comfort in coming back to where they felt safest. Megan unloaded the bags, her movements efficient but thoughtful. Emma hesitated at the door, glancing back at her dad with a question in her eyes. He offered a reassuring smile. "Home, sweet home," he said, opening the door wide. Emma stepped inside, Jake bounding past her, already talking about playing in the yard and seeing his friends. Megan caught Alex's eye, giving him a nod that said what words couldn't. "We're here, and we're okay." The first few days back were a slow adjustment. Alex resumed work with a focused mind, but the echoes of the vacation lingered in quiet moments. A shadow by the window, the subtle watchfulness that had settled into his posture. Megan noticed it, too, the way Alex would pause, listening for sounds outside or checking on Emma more often than before. Emma, meanwhile, was quieter at swim practice, her usually confident strokes a bit hesitant. Her coach, Mrs. Tanner, an observant woman with a warm smile, approached Alex after practice one day. "She's off her game," Mrs. Tanner said, arms crossed as she watched Emma pack up her swim gear. "Has something happened?" Alex nodded, choosing his words carefully. "We had an experience on vacation that shook her up. She's still finding her footing." Mrs. Tanner's expression softened. "Give her time. She's strong, just like her parents." Alex managed a smile, watching as Emma waved goodbye to her friends, the glimmer of a grin appearing on her face when one of them made a joke. News of the Carters' experience at Silver Shore spread quietly through the community. Neighbors who had vacationed there or heard stories came by to express their support. Ms. Lopez, the elderly woman who lived next door and always had an encouraging word, dropped off a basket of cookies with a handwritten note. "For your brave girl. You are stronger than you know." Emma read the note, her eyes wide with a mix of surprise and gratitude. She looked up at her parents. "Do people really think I'm brave?" she asked, a small tremor in her voice. Alex crouched beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "They do. And they're right." Emma's smile grew, the first genuine one since they'd left the resort. Over dinner one night, the family settled into the familiar comfort of shared stories and laughter. Jake recounted an exaggerated tale from school, his eyes wide as he mimicked his friend's dramatic fall during gym class. Emma giggled, the sound light and free. Then, in a rare moment of quiet, Emma looked at Alex and Megan. "Do you think that Lifeguard will ever work somewhere else?" The question hung in the air, Jake pausing mid-bite to look between his sister and parents. Megan's expression softened, and Alex set down his fork, taking a breath. "I don't know him," he admitted. "But what we did, telling the resort, making sure he was removed, it helps make sure he can't just walk away without consequences. And if he tries, there will be a record of what happened." Emma nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the weight of her father's words. "I'm glad we said something," she said finally, her voice steady. "So am I," Alex said, pride swelling in his chest. It wasn't easy, but it was the right thing to do. In the weeks that followed, Silver Shores announced new policies. A bulletin appeared in local papers. Resort implements stronger safety measures following incident. The article outlined how staff were now required to undergo more extensive background checks and training programs designed to handle guest safety with heightened awareness. Alex read the article with a mixture of satisfaction and hope. It wasn't just about them anymore. Other parents reached out through social media, some sharing similar stories of unnoticed issues at other resorts, others thanking Alex and Megan for their courage. It became clear that the Carter stand had sparked wider conversations. One evening, a reporter called, requesting an interview with Alex and Megan to discuss the impact of their actions. They debated it over coffee in the kitchen, Emma listening from the hallway. "We should do it," Megan said finally, placing her mug down with a determined thud. "People need to know that speaking up works." Alex nodded, a familiar weight settling in his chest. This time, it felt more like resolve than fear. Emma decided to write about her experience for a school project, titling it "What I Learned About Bravery." The essay was short but powerful, recounting how she had felt scared and unsure, but also how her parents' support had helped her find courage. Alex found the draft on the kitchen table one afternoon, the words carefully written in Emma's neat handwriting. The last line made his throat tighten. Bravery isn't about not being afraid. It's about speaking up when something isn't right, even if you are. He shared it with Megan, who read it with tears gathering in her eyes. "She's incredible," she whispered, placing the paper down carefully as if it were something precious. "She really is," Alex agreed, pride and love filling his chest. Life slowly returned to its familiar pace. Emma's confidence grew day by day, evident in the way she dove into the pool at practice and laughed with her friends. Jake continued to chatter endlessly, blissfully wrapped up in his 8-year-old world of superheroes and games. One Saturday, Alex and Megan watched Emma at her first swim meet since the trip. The whistle blew, and she launched herself into the water, her strokes smooth and powerful. When she touched the wall and turned, her face was lit with a grin that spoke of victory, not just in the race but over the shadows that had haunted her. "She did it," Megan said, her voice breaking as she clapped. Alex nodded, his hands coming together in a cheer as he met Emma's eyes. She waved, triumphant, the weight of the past replaced with pride and joy. A letter from Silver Shores arrived a month later, signed by Mr. Conway. It was an invitation to return, offered as a gesture of appreciation and to showcase the changes they'd made. Alex read it over breakfast, passing it to Megan with a wry smile. "Would you ever go back?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Alex thought for a moment, then looked at Emma, who was busy spreading jam on toast, humming softly to herself. "Maybe one day," he said, glancing at Megan. "But only if everyone's ready." Emma caught his eye and smiled, the unspoken understanding passing between them. "Someday," she echoed, her voice full of hope. A few weeks after Emma submitted her essay, her teacher, Mrs. Clark, asked her to read it at a school assembly focused on community and resilience. At first, Emma hesitated, the thought of standing in front of her peers stirring up nerves. But with encouragement from Alex and Megan, she agreed, her voice quiet but determined. On the day of the assembly, the gym buzzed with the chatter of students and teachers, the folding chairs creaking as everyone settled in. Alex and Megan sat near the back, pride mingled with anticipation as they watched Emma walk up to the podium. She paused, taking a breath, and looked out at the sea of faces. "My name is Emma Carter, and I want to talk about what bravery means," she began, her voice steadying as she continued. She spoke about their vacation, the moments of fear, and how speaking up had changed everything. Sometimes, being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are. The room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. When she finished, applause erupted, filling the space with warmth. Alex caught her eye and clapped the hardest, Megan beside him with a tearful smile. Emma's eyes shone with pride as she stepped down, walking back to her seat with her head held high. The following weekend, the reporter who had reached out to the Carters arrived for an interview. The dining room, usually filled with Jake's toys and school projects, was cleared and tidy, the sunlight streaming in through the large window. Emma sat beside Alex, shifting slightly as the reporter, Karen Ellis, adjusted her notes. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me," Karen said, a kind smile on her face. "The story of what your family did has resonated with so many people." Alex nodded. "We're glad if it helps others realize that speaking up can make a difference." Karen turned to Emma. "Emma, I read your essay. It was very moving. How did it feel to share your story with your classmates?" Emma glanced at Alex, who gave her a subtle nod. "It was a little scary," she admitted, "but it also felt good. I wanted them to know that it's okay to tell someone when you're afraid." Karen's eyes softened. "You're very brave, Emma. What would you say to someone who feels nervous about speaking up?" Emma's brows furrowed in thought before she replied, "I'd tell them that it's normal to be scared, but if you don't say anything, nothing will change. And you don't have to do it alone." The interview ended with Karen thanking the Carters for their time. "Your story is going to help more people than you know," she said before leaving. The experience sparked a new resolve in Alex. He reached out to a friend who ran a nonprofit that focused on guest safety and consumer advocacy. Over coffee, They discussed how Alex could get involved by speaking at seminars and sharing their experience as a case study for why policies and vigilance matter in public spaces. Megan listened intently as Alex recounted the conversation later that evening. "I think it's great," she said. "You've always been about protecting others. This way, you can share what we learned." Emma, who was helping Jake with his homework at the table, looked up and smiled. "Maybe I could come too, sometimes, to tell people that kids notice things too." Alex's chest tightened with pride. "I'd love that, Em." One morning, a letter arrived with Silver Shores Resort's letterhead, but this time it wasn't just a formality. Mr. Conway's handwriting was scrawled in neat blue ink across the top of a typed page. Asterisk, "Dear Carter family, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to share that, thanks to your efforts, we've fully implemented the promised safety and training measures. I am also proud to say that the local tourism board has taken note and is considering adopting similar policies across multiple resorts in the region. Your actions have made an impact that extends far beyond our walls. With sincere gratitude, James Conway, asterisk." Megan read it aloud, her voice catching on the last line. Emma grinned, Jake bouncing in his chair, sensing the excitement, but not fully understanding why. "So, we did more than just protect our family," Megan said, folding the letter carefully and placing it on the counter. "We did," Alex agreed, the knowledge settling like a warm glow in his chest. Summer rolled into full swing, and the Carters decided to spend an afternoon at the local community pool. It was a test, Alex knew, to see how Emma would feel returning to an environment that had once been shadowed by fear. But she surprised him by running ahead with Jake, already laughing and pulling off her sandals. Megan glanced at Alex, a question in her eyes. "Do you think she's ready?" Alex smiled, watching Emma dive into the water with smooth, practiced strokes. "She is. We all are." They set up their chairs and watched as Emma called out to Jake, helping him with his floaties. The afternoon was filled with splashes and laughter, the water sparkling under the sun. It was as if a weight had lifted, replaced with a newfound confidence. Emma climbed out at one point, shaking water from her hair and catching Alex's eye. "Come on, Dad. Race you," she called, grinning. Alex stood, shedding his t-shirt and jogging to the edge. "You're on," he said, and dove in, the cool water enveloping him as he heard Emma's laugh echo above. As they drove home that evening, windows down and the warm wind tousling their hair, Alex felt a deep sense of peace. Emma leaned her head against the window, the last rays of the sun casting a golden glow on her face. Jake was asleep in the back, his mouth open as he clutched a towel to his chest. Megan reached over, taking Alex's hand. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" He nodded, glancing at her with a soft smile. "We have, and I'm proud of all of us." Emma opened her eyes and turned to them, her smile sleepy but genuine. "Me too," she said softly, before drifting back to sleep. The streetlights flickered on as they turned onto their street, the familiar sight of their home welcoming them back. They had weathered a storm they hadn't expected, but in its wake, they'd found something stronger. A reminder that facing fears together could lead to courage they didn't know they had. The Carters settled back into their routines with an air of quiet resilience. Alex continued his work, balancing his career with newfound advocacy efforts. While Megan returned to her job at the local clinic, her perspective deepened by their recent ordeal. Emma flourished in school, her confidence growing day by day. The essay she wrote, "What I Learned About Bravery," was entered into a regional writing contest, and when the news came that she had won first place, the whole family celebrated with ice cream and a night of laughter. One Saturday, as Alex was packing up the car for a day at the lake, Emma tugged on his sleeve. "Dad, can I bring my essay to show Grandma? I want her to know about everything that happened." Alex's heart swelled at her determination. "Of course, I'm sure she'd love to hear it." The drive to visit Megan's parents was filled with stories, music, and the light-hearted teasing that had become a hallmark of their drives. Emma sat in the back, the essay clutched in her hands, her smile bright and unwavering. At the lake, Emma stood in front of her grandparents, her voice steady as she read her essay aloud. The water shimmered behind her, the gentle rustling of the trees lending a serene backdrop to her words. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before her grandmother, eyes glistening, stood and wrapped Emma in a hug. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've grown into someone who stands up for what's right." Emma beamed, glancing at Alex, who nodded with pride. That evening, as the family gathered around a fire pit, Megan's father turned to Alex. "You know what you all did at that resort? It takes courage. And it's good to see it didn't just end there." Alex sipped his coffee, the warmth of the moment seeping into him. "It changed all of us," he admitted. "And if it means that others feel empowered to speak up, then it was worth everything." Alex began partnering with local community groups, speaking at workshops on safety and awareness. Megan attended when she could, supporting him and sharing insights from a parent's perspective. They worked together to craft presentations that included practical advice for families on vacation, emphasizing vigilance without fear. One afternoon, after a successful talk at a nearby school, Alex sat on the edge of the stage as parents came up to ask questions. One mother, holding the hand of a little girl about Jake's age, approached hesitantly. "Thank you for sharing your story," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "It's comforting to know that we're not alone and that there's a way to protect our kids." Alex smiled, feeling the connection that had become a constant reminder of why they spoke out. "We're all in this together," he replied. "And if our story can help, that means everything to us." Emma's role in the family's advocacy work began to grow. She joined Alex at community events, sharing her perspective as a child who had experienced fear and learned to overcome it. Her clear, straightforward way of speaking resonated with other kids, who listened closely as she described how important it was to trust adults and speak up when something felt wrong. One day, after speaking at a youth event, Emma sat with her parents on the grass, watching as other kids played nearby. "I like doing this," she said, a note of surprise in her voice. "I didn't think I would, but it feels good to talk about it." Megan squeezed her hand. "It's because you're helping others, Em. You're showing them that it's okay to be brave, even when it's hard." Emma nodded, the glow of pride in her eyes. A year after their fateful vacation, the Carters received a follow-up letter from Mr. Conway at Silver Shores. The resort had undergone significant changes, and Conway invited the Carters back as honored guests to see the updates firsthand. It was an offer that Alex and Megan debated over for days, weighing the past against the present. In the end, they decided to go, not just to revisit the place that had tested them, but to see the progress their actions had sparked. Emma was older now, her confidence solid. When they arrived at the resort, they were greeted with warmth, the staff aware of their story. Mr. Conway met them in the lobby, his expression earnest. "Thank you for coming back," he said. "Your story set the course for everything we've done since. I wanted you to see it for yourself." As they toured the resort, Emma pointed out new safety signs and protocols, nodding approvingly. The changes were tangible, a testament to the power of action. Their final evening at Silver Shores was marked by a quiet family dinner on the beach. The sun dipped low, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. Emma and Jake played at the water's edge, their laughter mingling with the sound of the waves. Megan watched them, her eyes soft with emotion. "This feels different now," she said. "We're not just here as guests. We're here as a reminder of what can happen when people choose to do the right thing." Alex nodded, the pride in his chest swelling. "And when we go home, we'll keep sharing that. We'll keep reminding people that their voices matter." Emma ran back up the beach, her hair windswept and her smile bright. "Dad, come on. We're racing to the rocks," she called, challenging him with a playful grin. Alex stood, brushing the sand from his hands. "You're on," he said, breaking into a run as Jake cheered them both on. As he reached the water's edge, Alex looked back at Megan, who waved, her smile wide. They had come full circle, from a vacation filled with unexpected fear to one filled with hope and strength. And in that moment, as he chased his children under the setting sun, he knew that their journey had only just begun. Back at home, the Carters settled into a new rhythm. Alex continued his advocacy work, now collaborating with larger organizations to push for industry-wide safety standards. Emma joined her school's debate team, finding that her voice was stronger than ever, and Megan took on a new role at the clinic, focusing on family wellness. One evening, Alex received a message from Mr. Conway, updating him on the industry-wide changes that had been inspired by their experience. The letter ended with a simple, heartfelt sentence. Your family's bravery has helped protect countless others. Thank you. Alex shared the letter with Megan, who read it and then handed it to Emma. She looked up, eyes shining. We really made a difference, didn't we? Alex nodded, pulling her into a hug. Yes, we did, and we'll keep doing it. The Carters knew that while their story began with fear, it grew into one of courage, unity, and lasting change. And as they looked forward, they were ready for whatever came next, knowing they would always face it together. The impact of the Carters' experience continued to ripple through their community. Local parents organized a Safety in Public Spaces seminar at the community center, and Alex was invited as the keynote speaker. The auditorium was filled with parents, teachers, and even teenagers, eager to hear his story and learn practical ways to protect their families. Alex stood at the podium, the room hushed and attentive. Megan sat in the front row with Emma and Jake, her expression a mix of pride and support. Alex began by recounting their vacation, describing the unease that had evolved into a confrontation and how they had chosen to act despite their fear. Speaking up isn't easy, he said, his voice steady. But when we stay silent, we give up the power to change things. Our family learned that courage is found not in the absence of fear, but in the decision to do what's right, even when you're scared. The room erupted in applause, and as Alex stepped down, people approached him with words of gratitude and stories of their own. Emma watched her dad, seeing the impact his words had on others, and felt her own confidence solidify even more. A few days after the seminar, the Carters received a letter at home. This time, it wasn't from Silver Shores or a local organization. It was from a mother who had been in the audience that night. Asterisk, Dear Mr. Carter, I wanted to thank you for sharing your story. My daughter has struggled with anxiety, especially when we go on vacations. After hearing your story, she told me she felt less alone. We talked about being brave and speaking up just like Emma did. You may never know how many people you've helped, but I wanted you to know that you've touched our lives. Thank you for reminding us that we all have a voice. With gratitude, Sandra and Mia asterisk. Emma read the letter aloud at the dinner table, her voice soft and awed. When she finished, she looked at Alex and Megan. It feels good knowing that we're helping people. Megan reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. It does, and it's because you were brave enough to be honest. As summer approached again, the community planned an event called Family Safety Day, complete with activities, booths, and guest speakers. Alex was asked to be on the planning committee, which included coordinating workshops and interactive sessions where kids could learn about recognizing safe and unsafe situations. The event day was bright and bustling, with laughter and the excited shouts of children echoing through the park. Emma, wearing a t-shirt that read, Your Voice Matters, helped run a booth with Jake. They handed out pamphlets and stickers that read, Speak up, stay safe. At one point, Tara, the lifeguard from Silver Shores who had helped Alex during the vacation, appeared at the event. She approached the Carters with a warm smile. Hey, I heard about today and wanted to see it for myself. You all have inspired more people than you realize. Emma's eyes lit up, and she offered Tara a pamphlet. Want to help hand these out? Tara laughed and nodded. I'd love to. As the sun set on Family Safety Day, the park transformed with a soft glow of string lights hung from trees and booths. Parents mingled, children chased each other across the grass, and the hum of conversation filled the air. Alex stood near the main stage, watching the crowd and feeling a sense of fulfillment he hadn't expected. The journey had started with fear and uncertainty, but had led them here, to a place of community and support. Megan joined him, handing him a cup of lemonade. Look at what we've done, she said, gesturing to the crowd. Alex nodded, his gaze landing on Emma, who was talking animatedly with a group of kids. It's more than I could have hoped for. From the stage, the event organizer's voice rang out. A special thank you to the Carter family for sharing their story and reminding us all of the power of speaking up. Your courage has created ripples that will continue to make waves. The crowd turned, clapping as Alex, Megan, Emma, and Jake stood together, accepting the applause with humble smiles. Back home that night, the Carters sat on their porch, the air cool and still, filled with the chirping of crickets. Emma leaned against Alex, sleepy but content. Jake sat at Megan's feet, nodding off after the excitement of the day. Today was perfect, Emma murmured, her eyes half closed. It was, Megan agreed, reaching out to ruffle Jake's hair. And it's only the beginning. Alex wrapped an arm around Emma, looking out at the stars. Whatever comes next, we'll face it. Together. Emma's eyes opened a sliver, and she smiled up at him. Because we're brave? Alex grinned, squeezing her shoulder. Yes, because we're brave. And with that, the Carters sat together, enveloped in the peace they had fought so hard to find, knowing that their voices, and the impact of their courage, would continue to resonate, not just within their family, but in the hearts of many. Several months after Family Safety Day, Alex received an unexpected call from Safe Spaces Initiative, a national organization dedicated to promoting safety in public venues. Their director, Mark Adams, explained how the Carter story had inspired discussions about broader guest safety and awareness programs across the country. We'd like you to join our advisory board, Mark said, his voice enthusiastic over the phone. Your insight as both a former law enforcement officer and as a parent who's faced these challenges firsthand would be invaluable. Alex was quiet for a moment, the significance of the offer settling in. He glanced at Megan, who was watching him curiously, and nodded. I'd be honored, he said, feeling the shift from personal experience to active advocacy becoming more tangible. The board position meant speaking at conferences, helping shape policy recommendations, and being part of a network that could amplify their message. Emma's face lit up when Alex told her about it that evening. Does that mean we'll keep helping other families? She asked, eyes bright with excitement. Alex smiled, ruffling her hair. That's exactly what it means. Emma's school announced that the district would hold a safety week, inviting parents to volunteer and speak about their experiences. Megan signed up to lead a session on emotional safety for children, while Alex prepared a talk focused on recognizing and responding to signs of discomfort in public spaces. The Carter story had become part of local lore, and the interest from the school community was strong. Emma was proud to see her parents leading these discussions, and she found herself more confident when asked to participate. She decided to write another piece, this time titled, Why Kids Need to Be Heard. Jake, still young and playful, joined in by helping make posters with simple safety tips. His favorite read, If something feels wrong, tell someone strong. The simple act of watching her brother's enthusiasm filled Emma with a warm sense of purpose. Alex's first meeting with the Safe Spaces Initiative took place in a conference room overlooking the city skyline. The room was filled with people from different backgrounds, parents, advocates, legal experts, and child psychologists. Mark Adams introduced Alex to the group, outlining the importance of his voice on the board. Alex shared the Carter story, speaking candidly about their fear, their decision to confront it, and the support they had found in their community. Safety isn't just a policy, it's a culture, he said, looking around the room. It starts with awareness and continues with the courage to speak up. Nods of agreement circled the table, and Alex felt a familiar sense of camaraderie, different from his days in law enforcement, but just as meaningful. This time, he was protecting not only his family, but helping others do the same. Emma's school safety week arrived with a mix of anticipation and nerves. Her teacher, Mrs. Clark, announced that Emma would be reading her new essay during an assembly. The gym was packed with students, parents, and staff. Megan and Alex sat side by side, their hands clasped as they watched Emma walk up to the microphone. Sometimes kids think they're too small to make a difference or that their worries don't matter, Emma began, her voice steady. But they do. I learned that when we speak up, adults listen, and change happens. A wave of quiet murmurs passed through the audience as Emma spoke about her experience at Silver Shores, emphasizing that being brave wasn't about never being scared, but about acting in spite of it. When she finished, the applause was so loud that it echoed through the hall, bringing a smile to her face that stretched from ear to ear. Mrs. Clark approached her afterward, eyes shining. Emma, you've taught us all something today. Emma turned to her parents, who were beaming. I think we're going to keep doing this, aren't we? She asked. Alex's voice was thick with emotion. Yes, we are. Emails and letters continued to pour in, not just from their community, but from people around the country who had heard about the Carter story. Parents shared their own experiences and asked for advice on how to approach difficult conversations with their children. Megan and Alex began hosting monthly webinars, sharing practical safety tips and discussing ways families could foster open communication. Emma occasionally joined, adding her own perspective on what children needed to feel heard. Her simple but powerful messages resonated, especially when she said, "Sometimes kids just need to know that their worries are real, even if they're small." One evening, after a particularly well-attended webinar, Megan turned to Alex as they cleaned up. "Who knew that a vacation gone wrong would lead to all this?" she said with a half-smile. "It's funny how life works," Alex agreed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "We faced something hard, but we turned it into something that could help others. That's what matters." The next summer, the Carters planned a new vacation, a road trip that would take them to national parks and small, scenic towns. This time, their preparations included lessons from the past, conversations about safety, awareness, and staying connected. But there was no fear, only excitement. On their first night camping under a sky full of stars, Emma and Jake sat wrapped in sleeping bags, pointing out constellations. Megan leaned against Alex, the crackling fire reflecting in her eyes. "Are you happy?" she asked, a question that felt deeper than just the moment. Alex looked at his family, at Emma's confident smile, and Jake's endless curiosity. "More than ever," he said. As they drifted to sleep, the night was filled with a peaceful silence. The Carters knew that life would always bring challenges, but they also knew that together they could face them. Their voices had become part of a greater chorus, one that spoke of courage, resilience, and the power of standing up when it mattered most. The legacy of their actions would continue, woven into the fabric of their community and beyond. And as they moved forward, they carried with them not just the memory of what had happened, but the strength it had given them to keep speaking out, keep protecting each other, and keep inspiring those around them. Months after their road trip, Alex received an invitation from Silver Shores Resort to attend a ceremony recognizing community leaders who had impacted safety and awareness initiatives. The resort's newly implemented programs had gained national attention, and the Carters were mentioned as the catalyst for these sweeping changes. Megan, Emma, and Jake listened as Alex read the invitation aloud, the weight of their journey coming back to them. "Should we go?" he asked, his voice hesitant but hopeful. Emma's eyes lit up with a mix of excitement and resolution. "I think we should. It would show how far we've come." The family agreed, and a few weeks later, they found themselves back at Silver Shores, but this time under much different circumstances. The resort looked familiar, yet new signs and added safety features were evident. Staff greeted the Carters warmly, with genuine recognition and gratitude in their eyes. Mr. Conway stood near the ceremony stage, waiting to address the attendees. When he saw the Carters, he stepped forward with a smile. "I'm glad you came," he said, shaking Alex's hand. "This is as much your moment as it is ours." The ceremony was held in the main garden, decorated with strings of lights that swayed gently in the breeze. Families, staff members, and local press gathered, their voices a low hum of anticipation. Emma sat between her parents, her eyes scanning the crowd and catching glimpses of children running and laughing. Children who, like her, deserved to feel safe wherever they went. Mr. Conway took the microphone and welcomed everyone, speaking about the journey the resort had taken to improve its practices. "But real change often begins with the courage of individuals who speak up when it's hardest," he said, gesturing to the Carters. "Tonight, we recognize the Carter family for reminding us all of the importance of listening, learning, and acting." The applause that followed was warm and genuine, washing over the Carters like a wave of gratitude. Alex felt Megan's hand squeeze his, and Emma sat up straighter, pride evident in her expression. When Alex was invited to say a few words, he stood, looking out at the crowd and feeling the significance of the moment. "This isn't just about our story," he said. "It's about every family's right to safety and every person's ability to make a difference." We were just one voice, but together, we can create change that protects everyone. After the ceremony, families approached the Carters to express their thanks and share their own stories. One mother spoke with tears in her eyes about how the new training had made her feel safer during her last vacation. Another father said his son, who struggled with anxiety, felt more comfortable in public spaces after hearing Emma's story. Emma listened, her eyes wide with understanding. "It's not just about us," she said softly to Alex. "It's bigger." Alex nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It always has been." Tara, the lifeguard who had supported Alex during the incident, approached them, now a senior staff member at the resort. "It's incredible to see how everything has changed," she said. "Your story wasn't just a wake-up call. It became a guide." Megan smiled. "And it's people like you who listened that made it possible." That evening, the Carters walked along the beach, the sand cool beneath their feet and the sound of the ocean filling the air. The moon cast a gentle glow on the water, and Emma skipped ahead, holding Jake's hand as they splashed at the shoreline. Megan wrapped an arm around Alex, resting her head on his shoulder. "Did you ever think we'd be back here, but like this?" she asked. "Not in a million years," Alex admitted, a smile playing at his lips. "But I'm glad we are. It feels like we closed a chapter and opened a new one." Emma ran back, her eyes sparkling in the moonlight. "Dad, remember when you said that being brave is about speaking up even when you're scared?" "I do," Alex said, watching her carefully. "I think that's what this whole year has been about," Emma said, her voice both thoughtful and certain. Alex's throat tightened, and he knelt down, pulling her into a hug. "You're right, and it's a lesson we'll carry with us forever." The following morning, before they left Silver Shores, Mr. Conway met the Carters for breakfast, handing Alex a brochure. "We're launching a new initiative, guest advisory panels to help maintain our standards. If you're interested, we'd love for you to be part of it." Alex exchanged a look with Megan and then with Emma, who grinned. "It sounds like the kind of thing we do," she said, with renewed purpose. The Carters left the resort, knowing their story had become more than an isolated experience. It was part of a movement towards safer spaces, not just at Silver Shores, but wherever families gathered. Back home, Alex reflected on the past year as he stood in the backyard, watching Jake and Emma chase each other. The garden was blooming, filled with the laughter and light that had been missing during those tense days of their vacation. He felt Megan's presence before she spoke, her hand finding his. "Are you ready for what comes next?" she asked, her tone playful but sincere. Alex turned to her, eyes warm with conviction. "I am, and I know that whatever it is, we'll handle it together." The sound of Emma's laughter carried across the yard, and Alex knew that they had built something stronger than before, a foundation of trust, courage, and the unwavering belief that their voices could make a difference. As the sun set and the evening came to life with the glow of fireflies, the Carters sat together, surrounded by the simple, profound joy of being safe, loved, and heard. And in that moment, they knew they were ready for whatever the future would bring, confident that their legacy of bravery and resilience would continue to inspire others for years to come. Thank you for following the Carters' journey of courage, resilience, and the power of speaking up. If you found this story inspiring and want more stories that emphasize family, bravery, and positive change, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Your support means the world to us, and we'd love to hear where you're watching from or what part of the Carters' story resonated with you most. Leave a comment below and join our community.